right, so out here in Mendocino, California, we are with Anton Schlafer, 6th generation redwood logger, and we're gonna talk today about how to jack a tree over. So what do we got over here? Where's your jack, Gordy? What kind of jack is that, Gordy? What do we got there?
Bontrager 53 ton.
How's that thing work?
It's an aluminum jack. It's got a steel casing in it, and it's built for tree jacking. This is your bleeder, and then when you're ready to jack, you just tighten it up. It's got your pressure gauge on there. Pretty basic.
What size is this?
This is 53 ton.
Is that the biggest they make?
This is the biggest that Bontrager makes, and it's got, I believe, 4 1/4 inches of lift. It might be 4 1/2.
Maybe it is. I think the little one that Garrett has is 4 1/4.
Yeah, there's actually a red mark on the cylinder once you get it jacked up, and then once you see that red mark, you're not supposed to jack any further because it'll obviously take the seals out. But
so to me, it looks like a modified bottle jack. Is that sort of right? I mean, I've seen some people using bottle jacks. What do you think?
It's a lot heavier duty. This plate actually moves on top of the cylinder, and there's grease underneath here to keep everything from moving. So when the tree actually moves, you see the movement in the top of the jack.
Right. Oh, I see. So
a bottle jack doesn't have that ability. So a bottle jack can actually kick out. This is designed to jack, move. It's got a big flat surface, so you're not going to push up into the grain of the tree.
It's got grip surfaces on the top to hold and bottom.
That's the real deal. Okay.
The springs on it, you know, a bottle jack doesn't have a spring to relieve the pressure in a bottle jack. So bottle jacks work by jacking something up and then letting something down. This thing doesn't have anything to let down. If you do it right, the tree's gone. So the springs assist the hydraulics to sink back into the jack.
I believe there's 4 of these style jacks, and then he has a backpack also. But it goes 28 ton, 37, 45, and then the 53.
Where do you buy these at?
Bontrager. They're a really great outfit, and
super nice.
he builds really nice
to
stuff.
Talk to. He answers any questions you guys have. I mean, he's great. Puts out a super amazing product.
You jack a lot of trees over?
I jack quite a few. Yeah.
I have the 28 ton, so my 28 ton is in the red all the time, and it holds up. Like, I will max the jack out and then start beating wedges and then chase it with the jack and bring it all the way to red again. I mean, it hasn't had any issues whatsoever. And the 28 is obviously the smallest one, but it's nice to carry into these deep holes and stuff. So
it's lighter. Yeah, that thing's heavy. How come we don't just follow this thing downhill, since it leans downhill?
Well, number one, the property line's right down there, and this tree would extend past the property line. That's number one. Number two, this is a watercourse protection zone, so there's actually a creek in the bottom of this draw. You can see the flags over there, the blue flags and the white flags that are over there. That shows that there's a creek in the bottom of this. It's just a class 3, so it doesn't have any water in it right now, but it's a seasonal creek, so in the wintertime it'll flow water, so we can't just fall stuff in there for habitat and other reasons. So we can't put it that way for those 2 reasons. And the most obvious reason is if you fall this tree down the hill, it's going to turn into toothpicks. And we want to save if we're going to cut a big tree like this, we want to save the max amount of this tree that we can, because if you're going to cut a tree, you don't want to break a tree.
Right, so it's softer, you know, the tree's not falling as long, so way less velocity if it lands uphill than downhill. What are you saying, the top of this is like 200 miles an hour?
Yeah, it's moving. When it hits the ground, it's yeah.
Yeah, so it's moving super slow down here, but extend that way up there, it hits the ground hard. Yeah. So, okay, so what are you gonna do first?
I'm gonna put my back cut in, then I'm gonna measure the jack and set my jack seat, and then we'll set the jack in it. I'll make sure my bar clears, and then we'll put some pressure on the back of it, get it jacked up, follow it with some wedges.
You always do the back cut first?
Back cut first, jack seat, and then I will start my undercut, get it to where it's within the tolerances, and then if I have to cut a little bit more while we're jacking, we can, but we'll probably try to get it pretty close first go. So I'm gonna cut this one up and jack it up, put the undercut in it, let it sit for a minute, and then I'll saw this one in front where my axe is at, just get it sawed up with a wedge in it, and then we'll push with that one.
Okay. Anton loves huskies.
I don't even want to touch
He's
this
gonna
thing.
He's gonna,
God,
you're
this
gonna,
thing's heavy. Holy moly, compared to a 500i, this weighs a lot.
he's gonna be a believer soon. It's all stock. No mods, nothing.
All right.
Anton's.
Well, it started.
So this measurement is super crucial. And the reason why is because you want as much lift as you can with your jack. And if you cut this low, you're probably gonna end up building yourself some sort of platform or whatever to get, because you'll run out of lift on the back of the tree.
You only got 4 inches of lift. And if this is a heavy leaner backwards, you need all 4 inches. So sometimes I cut a little shallow.
See,
And sometimes I'm pretty close to just
pretty
right.
close. Right on the
Oh wow, wow.
If you wiggle it enough, and maybe you can tap it a little bit. I think I have a little hump right here, Gordy, but I can wiggle. But that's how tight you want it.
That's
Because this lifts
maximum
4
lift right
inches. Okay.
And that's why Anton took his time measuring that, because I've actually screwed up myself and cut way too much. And it looks like you're cutting right until you set the jack in there, and then you're cutting a shelf to get the jack back up.
So what do you do if you cut too much and you
gotta
don't hold too
build-
big?
You gotta
Cut a piece of wood or block and put it on top.
Yeah.
Put it below.
or below.
Okay.
It's not good.
And it takes more time. So by him taking his time and measuring, saved him time.
So that's why you measured it and just made a mark. What is
Yeah.
it, 10 inches or so?
Yeah, let me see if I can fit it in over here. It might be a little tighter over here. Yeah, it's tighter. I'm gonna need to saw a little bit, but it's really not too awful much. It's just a little bit.
It's just shaving, and that's a lot better than going back to cut a block. And sometimes the blocks crack.
And squeeze out.
They're not gonna hold as much as this solid wood.
So I'll shave that. If you pull that out, I'll shave just a little bit. That should do it. Sometimes you gotta wiggle it around a little bit to get it in there, but
Nice.
Perfect fit.
that's pretty good. Now I want to see if my bar will clear, so I'll come over here and I'll stick my bar in, because what you don't want to do if you have to saw again in the back of this tree is saw into your $2,000, $2,500
Yep.
tree jack.
Your tip of your bar will get really close, because you're trying to leave a bunch of holding wood beyond the jack to hold the tree while you're getting the jack in. So you got to leave enough to get the bar back in. And sometimes, you know, when you're barring back in, it'll want to kick back and hit the top of your jack. And I've done it a bunch. Mine's all scarred up, so I had to learn the hard way. But another thing is you always want to leave yourself enough room to follow this thing up with a bunch of wedges. If this jack was ever to kick out, fail, anything, that wedge is in a good spot and to keep this tree from coming over backwards.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of guys totally block out the whole back of the tree, and if
There's
that
no
jack
wedges.
does not lift this tree, there's no other way to get it up.
Well,
unless
the
you
other
had
point
another jack.
being, and another really important thing about that with wedges, I mean, the most important part is what Gordy just talked about with safety. You want to be able to have wedges for safety reasons. So if this jack fails, it's great. But as Gordy was explaining earlier, when you redline this jack out, it has no more pressure. You can't give it any more. But if you have a wedge in alongside of it, you can beat those wedges and it'll actually reduce the pressure in the jack. And so you chase this jack with wedges and it will lift. You'll have even more lift, or the ability to lift that little bit extra that jack wouldn't do alone.
And you were telling me yesterday that sometimes you'll put the wedges in, and if you max the jack out, you'll take it out and then put the jack further into the tree sometimes?
No, I just like to get the jack far enough into the tree so that it's got the tree. If you're sitting out here on the edge, you can bust this piece is just sitting out here. See how it's kind of bulbous out here? kind of sitting out here, and some of this second growth redwood, it'll just peel right, it'll break right off and peel right off, or it'll peel off the tree itself.
So you gotta have it.
So you want to have it in a good solid area. You want it in good pink wood. See how we have it in the heart?
The other thing you were telling me yesterday is if you saw too deep, you'll make a weak point. If you saw it too deep going this way.
Yeah, and I probably did a little bit here.
No, it's
No.
Not much,
No.
but you really don't want to touch the tree if you can help it.
But Anton was saying if you cut too deep up here and here, it's like when you go to cut firewood, if you put a little scribe in there, the wood splits easier. So it's the same concept with the jack, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, when you're jacking a heavy lean-in tree, you don't want to do that.
Right, okay.
If you can help it. It's pretty hard to help.
All right.
But following that with the wedges is
It's the right thing to do.
it's the right thing to do. And especially if you had a heavy leaner and you got maxed out on this jack, you got your wedges in there. Now you could build your block, set your jack back in, and get another lift again.
Yeah. Or put a jack plate in.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it kind of saves you having them wedges in the back. So you'll see when we start jacking, we're always going to follow it with wedges all the way till it's over.
Okay, so we got the pressure in, we got the jack. Pressure's up and holding. We got a wedge in.
2 wedges.
Got a couple wedges in for backup. I'll start the undercut in this thing. Gordy's gonna watch my side on that side so that my cuts match up, but he's also gonna watch the pressure on the jack. He's gonna note what the pressure is on the jack right now. It's 9,000 pounds, correct?
Yep.
And so he's gonna tell me as I'm cutting, hey, pressure's going up, which means we don't have the tree, the pressure's going up. So at that point in time, I'm gonna stop and we're gonna put more pressure on the jack, more wedges, to see if we can compensate that weight. And we'll continue.
Why?
If the pressure goes down, then I know the tree's coming ahead, so I don't want to saw much more of an undercut because the tree will sit down on my saw when I'm making the undercut.
Okay.
It's very delicate kind of.
We don't want to let the tree set back.
You want to hold that
weight.
tree. You want to hold the weight. If it stays at 9,000 pounds and doesn't get heavier, we're great. If it drops to 8,000 pounds, then we need to not jack anymore and we need to make our undercut a little shallower and then follow with a back cut. Pretty good to me. Give me a little bit. I'm gonna saw that other one up right now. That one was sawed up. Got a wedge. And then we push it over there.
So Anton's gonna cut this one up and push it over with that one. It's also leaning downhill.
Way off. Little low.
About 3 inches. It's moving real easy with this jack.
She's on the go. You can see on that jack plate right now, see how much of an angle that's at. It's following this tree. That's one of the differences between a bottle jack
Come take a look at that,
and a
Jacob.
regular jack. So it's at an angle to this. See how it's really thick over here and super thin over here? It's because this plate sits on a round greasable ball up there and follows the tree.
A normal bottle jack wouldn't do that. So you're not getting
Yeah, just like you can see the wedges sticking straight.
This allows you
This
to
is at
keep
an
even
angle.
pressure on that tree at all times. And
Yeah.
we're already down. We started at 9,000. We're not
You
even
can
at
actually
1,000.
see on the camera the wedges are straight, so you can see this thing is tilting with the tree.
Yep.
And we got double stack wedges right here. So it's
It's going. You got it.
Yeah, it's
it's
going.
on its way.
I mean, I'm not even at 1,000 pounds right now.
It's going.
Hey, you snuck it right out of there. Wow.
Didn't hit the GoPro.
Wow, hey, so like we saw on that other tree, you can see the discoloration. It just pushed all the water out of the wood right here. Can see how... So, yeah, so much pressure, it just pushes all the water out. That's why it's that color. Crazy. And Todd, how long has your family been in this town logging these trees?
All my great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents have done this. My grandfather logged, and my uncles have logged. My direct family, I'm the only logger in my immediate family. My cousins, the uncles that had sons, they dabbled in it a little bit, and one of my cousins still kind of does dabble in it, but he's not a logger. I mean, he's a logger, but he's not really a logger.
You were showing me pictures of your great-great-grandparents in the 1860s.
Yeah, running the steam donkeys, trains, bull teams. One of my great-great-grandfathers was called a bull whacker. They used to use oxen to pull all these logs, big trees. I mean, big trees down into the draws, and then they would skid them down to the creeks and the rivers, roll them in the creek and the river, dam up the creek. The water would come all the way up, and they would trip them either with dynamite or whatever. That's exactly what they would do. They would blow the dam with dynamite, and it would release all the logs and water down the creek whoosh, to the next spot. And then they'd have another dam built, and they'd let the water and logs raise up, and they'd go like that. Or they would skid them down to train tracks if there was train tracks close, and they would have a steam-powered loader load them on the train cars.
Nuts.
Yeah, it was all horsepower and steam power.
That's
Oxen
incredible.
power. I think we did pretty good with this one. We saved out.
That jack's nice.
Yeah.
A lot more powerful than mine.
More than I can say.
Any other tips on jacking a tree over before I wrap this one up?
Can
you jack a small tree over?
Yeah, you can jack small trees over, depending on what you got, but you gotta have room for the jack, obviously. And or a smaller jack like Gordy's is good for smaller timber. But yeah, I always put the back. I mean, if you're gonna jack something, why would you not put the jack seat in first? Why would you not put your back cut and jack seat in first? Well, the reason you wouldn't do that is because the whole reason you're jacking the tree is because it's leaned so far that you can't wedge it. So if you put your undercut in first, when you go to start putting your jack seat and your back cut in, that tree's just going to take off and go down the hill. So you always back cut jack seat first.
Cool. All right. And that's how you jack a tree over. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.